Something has been pulling at the skin beneath your eyes and along your brow for years. And the source of that pull is not where anyone has ever told you to look. It is closer to the floor than to your face, tucked against the inner curve of your ankle, in a structure most people have never consciously touched in their lives. That is not a figure of speech. The inner ankle contains a small bone called the navicular. Unremarkable in name, remarkable in function. It acts as the keystone of the medial longitudinal arch, the inner curve of your foot that takes the first impact every time you step. And running upward from that bone through the deep tissues of your calf and thigh and abdomen and chest and neck is a continuous band of connective tissue that terminates at the base of your skull and then radiates forward along the surface of your scalp and down into the soft tissue surrounding your eyes. That band has a name. Thomas Myers, the anatomist who spent decades mapping the fascial lines of the human body and published the work that changed how manual therapists and movement practitioners understand structural connection, called it the deep front line. It spans, in an average adult, approximately 170 centimeters of unbroken connective tissue from the toes to the crown of the head. 170 centimeters, the length of a moderately tall person. One continuous structure. When there is compression at the navicular, chronic, unaddressed compression from years of standing on hard floors, from shoes that flatten that inner curve, from the way most people sit, in the way most people move, that compression does not stay local. It travels, slowly, imperceptibly, upward through the chain. In somewhere in that long transmission, the orbital soft tissue of your eye area begins to carry a load it was never designed to carry alone. The heaviness you feel there, the pull, the way the lower lid seems to rest lower than it once did. These things have a floor. I want to show you how to find it. When a gardener wants to understand why the leaves of a plant look wrong, too pale, too drooped, margins curling in the wrong direction, a competent gardener does not start with the leaf. The leaf is the last place anything gets decided. What gets decided happens at the root. The root system determines what reaches the surface, what is held back, what gets distorted in transit. A tangle far below the soil line expresses itself as pallor at the tip of the newest growth. And no amount of attention to the leaf resolves a problem that lives in the root. The medial fascial column, the deep front line, functions the same way. The navicular is not where the visible problem appears. It is where the problem begins. The suboccipital muscles at the base of your skull, the galea aponeurotica along your scalp, the orbital fascia around your eyes. These are the leaves. Distant, visible, carrying the consequences of compression that started far below. A gardener who understood this would not spray the leaves. A gardener would go to the root. That is what the inner ankle press does. It goes to the root. You may never have pressed your inner ankle with intention before. Most people haven't. It's not a location that announces itself in pain. It doesn't stiffen obviously the way a shoulder does. It doesn't ache the way a lower back does. It holds tension quietly. That's what makes it so easy to miss for so long. Let me trace the path more precisely, because understanding it changes what you feel when you do the press. Thomas Myers' dissection work, verified in anatomy theaters and documented in the bodywork literature, shows that the deep front line originates at the plantar surface of the foot and ascends through the tibialis posterior, a muscle that runs along the back of the shin and wraps around the inner ankle before attaching at the navicular. From there, the chain continues upward through the deep hip flexors, the diaphragm's fascial connections, the longus colli muscles along the front of the cervical spine, and into the suboccipital region where the skull meets the neck. That junction, skull to neck, is where the chain splits and continues forward. The suboccipital muscles connect through the posterior cervical fascia in the galea aponeurotica, the fibrous sheet covering the skull. The galea attaches forward to the frontalis muscle of your forehead in the orbicularis oculi, the circular muscle that governs your eyelid. The fascial envelope of your orbital region is continuous with tissue that has been under tension since the floor. 170 centimeters. The compression at the navicular is not broadcasting loudly. It's conducting, the way wire conducts. A small, constant current, sustained across years. The Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapies has documented how chronic, unresolved fascial restriction in the distal lower extremity correlates with tension patterns in the cervical and cranial soft tissue, a finding that makes complete mechanical sense once you trace the chain. What this means practically: the press is not a trick. It is an intervention at a real anatomical convergence point. When you release compression at the navicular, you are removing a load from a system that has been carrying it for years. There is something specific that happens when you first press here. The tissue is tender isn't quite the word I'm looking for. Resistant is closer. It has a quality of not wanting to yield. Not because it's painful necessarily, but because it has never been asked to yield. Most tissue responds to regular contact by becoming accustomed to it. The navicular region in most adults has never had sustained, directed pressure applied to it, which means the ground substance of the fascia there, the fluid matrix that determines how responsive connected tissue is, has thickened slightly, become less hydrated, more dense. You press in and you meet something. That's the place. People notice almost universally that pressing here produces a sensation that is not located only at the ankle. There is often a referral, a mild warmth, or a faint pulling sensation that travels up the inner calf. Some people notice their jaw shifts. Some notice their breathing changes. The chain is real. You can feel it responding. What I've observed in myself and across many people who've done this, the skepticism disappears approximately 15 seconds into the first press. Not because something dramatic happens, because something specific happens. The tissue changes under your thumb. The resistance shifts. Something that was braced releases its brace just slightly, and you feel your body redistribute that load. That's what the press is for. Not performance, not pain. Contact with a structure that has been holding tension without your knowledge. Now the press itself. There is a canvas analogy I want to use here because it captures something about the mechanics that the anatomy language doesn't quite reach. When a canvas is stretched unevenly from its lower corner, even a small persistent tension at one point, the paint surface above it distorts. Not dramatically, not with a visible tear, but the composition shifts. The upper sections carry a subtle wrongness that no amount of work at the surface will correct. Restoring it means addressing the corner. The navicular is the lower corner of your canvas. The orbital surface above is where the distortion becomes visible. An art restorer who understood this would not touch the paint surface until they had stabilized the canvas beneath it. That is the logic of this press. So, find the inner ankle. On either foot, it doesn't matter for your first time. Run your thumb along the inner edge of your foot, moving from the arch toward the ankle. You will find a small prominent bone, the navicular, that protrudes slightly inward. It sits roughly in line with the inner ankle bone, but lower, closer to the arch. In most people, it's easy to find because it is the most prominent bony landmark along the medial foot. Place the pad of your thumb directly on it, not on top of it, beside it, slightly below, in the soft tissue immediately surrounding the bone. This is where the tibialis posterior tendon wraps and where the fascial density is highest. Apply pressure, not aggressive pressure, the kind of pressure you would use to press a doorbell that you know someone will hear. Firm, intentional, steady. Hold. That's level 1. 20 seconds. Just hold. No movement, no massage, no friction. Sustain contact with that point. While you hold, breathe normally. Notice what happens at the tissue under your thumb. It will either feel resistant from the start, that thick, braced quality, or it will feel unexpectedly tender. Both of those are the same thing, compressed tissue that has been holding without release. At around the 10-second mark, you may notice the tissue beginning to soften. Not fully, just beginning. A slight change in the quality of what you're pressing against. That is the fascial ground substance starting to respond to sustained pressure. The piezoelectric response of connective tissue, which generates a small electrical charge under compression that signals the surrounding cells to reduce their tone. 20 seconds. Release slowly. Not quickly, slowly. Take your thumb away over the count of 3. Notice your jaw. Notice the area around your eyes. For some people, the change is immediate. For most, there is a subtle difference, a faint sense that something is slightly less held. That is what you're looking for. Not transformation, a change in the quality of held tension. Let me explain why 45 seconds and not 20, because the difference is not arbitrary. The piezoelectric response in fascia. And I want to be precise about this because the research on the mechanism is solid, but the timeline claims in popular wellness content are often wrong. The Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapies data and Thomas Myers' clinical documentation both suggest that initial softening begins within 10 to 15 seconds of sustained pressure, but the deeper shift in ground substance hydration requires a sustained signal of at least 40 to 50 seconds. Short presses touch the surface of the response. A full 45-second hold reaches the second phase. The first phase is muscular release. The tibialis posterior reduces its holding tone. The second phase is fascial. The connective tissue matrix begins to shift from its gel-like compressed state toward a more fluid state. That second phase is what sends the change upward through the chain. 20 seconds gets you phase 1. 45 seconds gets you both. Level 2 is the full press, the complete intervention. Position is the same. Thumb on the navicular's medial soft tissue. Firm, steady pressure. This time, you are going to breathe deliberately. 3 full breath cycles. Inhale through the nose, slow and full. Exhale through the mouth, slightly longer than the inhale. On the first exhale, you will often notice the tissue shift. Something releases under your thumb. Let your pressure follow it. Not increased pressure, just pressure that maintains contact as the tissue moves. Your thumb will feel it drop slightly, as if the point was elevated and is now settling. On the second exhale, the referral up the inner calf often clarifies. Some people notice the inner knee at this point. Some notice the hip. The chain is conducting the change upward. By the third exhale, the 40-second mark approximately, there is often something that happens in the jaw. A very slight settling, not dramatic. If you have been holding your molars lightly together, they may release. If your tongue has been pressed to the roof of your mouth, it may drop. These are indicators that the signal has traveled the chain and reached the suboccipital junction. The jaw and the orbital soft tissue are both downstream of that junction. At 45 seconds, release. Slowly, over a count of 3. Sit for a moment. 10 seconds, nothing. Then notice your eye area. Not with expectation of transformation, with the specific question, is there a difference in the quality of hold? In most people who have done this, the answer at this point is yes. Not visual transformation, a change in the internal sense of the tissue. The weight it has been carrying redistributes, just slightly, toward the ground. That redistribution is real. It is weird, the first time, to feel your face change from your ankle, but that is what the anatomy predicts, and the anatomy is right. Level 3 is the practice. This is not a one-time intervention. The compression that has accumulated over years does not resolve in a single 45-second press. What the press does, each time you do it, is interrupt the holding pattern. Signal the tissue that release is possible. Over time, with repetition, the resting tone of the deep front line at its origin point changes. The chain carries less default compression. Less is transmitted upward. The frequency that produces the most consistent results, in my own practice and in the pattern I've observed: once in the morning before you start moving, once in the evening before bed. For the morning, The press pairs naturally with the moment just before you leave your chair from breakfast or the moment after you've made your coffee but before you started the day. You are already still. You are already grounded. 30 seconds to locate the point, 45 seconds on each foot, 30 seconds to notice the change. That's 4 minutes. On days you don't have 4 minutes, 1 foot, 45 seconds. That's the minimum effective version. For the evening, the press works particularly well when done lying down. Floor, firm surface, legs relaxed. Thumbs to the inner ankles. The parasympathetic state of lying down means the fascial release tends to be deeper. Many people report that the jaw release happens faster when horizontal. In the cases I've tracked, and I want to give you a real number, not a marketing number, the shift that becomes consistently noticeable and that others occasionally comment on typically starts between day 4 and day 9 of daily practice. Not because the anatomy changes in 4 to 9 days, because the baseline holding tone of the deep front line is reduced enough by that point that the difference between morning before press and morning after press becomes visible to outside observers, not just perceptible to yourself. 4 to 9 days, every morning, every evening when you remember. That's the practice. The root system changes slowly and completely if you keep returning to it. Every morning, both feet, 45 seconds each. That's the entire thing. You find the point, you hold, you breathe, you release. Over weeks, the leaf surface, that area beneath your eyes, along your brow, the soft tissue that has been carrying a load from the floor, carries less. Not nothing. The load doesn't vanish, but it distributes more honestly, with the ground absorbing what the ground was always meant to absorb. There is no product between you and this, no device, no specialist required. The structure is in your body. The point is findable with your thumb. The 45 seconds belong entirely to you. I've been pressing this point for long enough now that my hands go there automatically. Morning, sitting on the edge of the bed. One thumb, then the other. The sensation has changed over time. Less resistant, more responsive. The tissue remembers being released and releases more easily. Yours will too. If this is the first time you've encountered the deep front line, or the first time you've thought about your inner ankle in connection to your face, then something has shifted in how you understand your own structure. Everything that shows up in your face has a floor beneath it, and now you know where to find that floor. Press it. If what I do here is useful to you, if this is the level of depth you want, stay close. Ground.